Okay, so my Giallo videos are jumping. Like, people are coming by, people are leaving comments, like, there's some good discussion going on. So, in honor of that, since you guys are liking the Giallo videos and I like Giallo a lot, I thought I would do another video. And welcome to the Giallo fans, and welcome to those of you who might watch these videos anyway. So, one of you, maybe even a couple of you, were curious about my thoughts on a certain Giallo called the New York Ripper. Particularly my thoughts being a woman. So I'm gonna break it down for you today, go through some of my thoughts. It's gonna be like a movie review, but it's not a plot review, okay? It's not what I did for Blade in the Dark. This is something different. I watched it a second time for you and wrote down some thoughts. So besides the fact that some of y'all were mentioning and recommending this movie, I also wanted to see it because it stars Andrea Occhipinti. How did I do? Occhipinti. And he was the lead in A Blade in the Dark, and I just love him. I think he's a little darling. So for those two reasons, I strapped myself in, aware of the reputation of this movie, and just prepared for the ride. I figured I've seen a lot by now. I can probably handle whatever's in this movie. That being said, this review is going to be discussing rated R content. It's not going to be showing rated R content, but the subject matter is going to come up. Also, there's going to be spoilers, like I'm going to tell you who the killer is and all that. So if you haven't seen the movie, watch it first, then come back. The New York Ripper from 1982. Runtime 93 minutes. Directed by Lucio Fulci, I guess. I forgot to check to see how to pronounce that. He is also the guy that did Don't Torture a Duckling and Lizard in a Woman's Skin. The tagline, or at least one of the taglines for this movie, is the most controversial film ever made. According to Wikipedia, this film's uncensored version has never been released. This film couldn't even be owned nor sold in the UK until 2002. I love movies with a reputation, I really do. Okay, so let's get into the movie. Obviously, it is set in New York, as the title would suggest. I've never been to New York, but I do not like it. I don't think it's cute. Like, I think about Seinfeld, I think about Friends, and just like the aesthetic is just kind of yuck. So you get thrown right into New York. Our lead character, he is a detective. His name doesn't matter because nobody's name matters in this movie. So we're gonna call him Mr. Cop because that's what the killer calls him. So Mr. Cop, like from the get-go, he's just not very likable. I was getting prepared for the violence because what I had heard of this movie is that it's really violent. So the first kill is just like a random girl, but it involves a lot of like stabbing and slashing. So you see like there's blood spraying everywhere. You see like the skin kind of like splitting and separating, and you see guts coming out, and it's pretty wild. It's pretty good. But even better than that, our killer, he quacks. He talks like Donald Duck. It's awesome. When I heard that, I was like, okay, this is off to a great start. Anyway, I thought the movie kind of like the whole thing carried on. It had a decent pace. It flowed. It was easy to follow. Like, it kept my attention the whole time. None of the characters, none of the people you encounter are particularly likable. The camera work, I really enjoyed. I'm trying to pay more attention to the camera work. I think that's something we take for granted a lot. So we get a lot of like shaky camera work, a lot of like abrupt zoom in and zoom outs, and just general close-ups, especially on some of the most uncomfortable parts of the movie. Well, what can I say about the red light district, aka the sex district? We get introduced to this lady who I'm gonna call the pervy wife. Sorry, like, no shade. She can do what she wants. I'm not trying to kink shame or whatever. Also, we meet the guy who's missing two fingers, and I just want to call him the two-fingered guy. So they and other people are watching this show. It's very uncomfortable, and I don't really have words for it, so I'll just give you some facial expressions, okay? So the pervy wife is just, I mean, she's enjoying it. She's doing her thing. She's recording with a little tape recorder or whatever. And, you know, I thought maybe that would lead to something in the movie, but it's just a thing they throw in there. There's no purpose to the tapes or anything. It's just something she's doing. But you know what? Despite how like blatant and uncomfortable it is, like these are all consenting adults. So, y'all do y'all's thing. Not sure why I'm watching it though. But I did find myself wondering what the point of all this was. What is the point of this extended scene? I was thinking like, why is this in here? But what we have to remember is this is an exploitation flick. This is an exploitation movie. So what is it going to do? It's going to exploit trends. It's going to exploit tropes. It's going to exploit things that make us uncomfortable or excited. It's going to exploit guilty pleasures, and it's going to exploit taboos. So that's what we have to remember about exploitation films, is that they will go there and there may not be a purpose. Maybe the purpose is just to exploit, just to shock, just to call you out. Exploitation films are calling us out as the audience. It's almost like clickbait, the way clickbait will just call you out. Our second on-screen kill is after the show. Our quacking killer is in the dressing room of the lady performer and ends up shoving a broken bottle where the sun don't shine, if you will. It's well done. It's not nice, but it's well done. That whole scene has beautiful like light and colors, and I thought that was really striking. And as far as the characters in this movie, they're slowly introducing characters, kind of like you're going up these steps. Like, okay, well now you're reaching this, you're unlocking this character, but they don't really matter. You know what I mean? So our Mr. Cop, he also partakes in prostitutes. Besides the fact that it's illegal, I guess there's really no reason to judge him. Again, consent. And he doesn't seem to be married. And he even has a favorite prostitute. So in a way, he's loyal. Now, I thought the little scene between them was cute. And there's this part where Mr. Cop is like, make me some coffee. And she's like, sweetheart, I'm a prostitute, not your wife. You want coffee, make it yourself. Okay, I want to talk about like the worst scene in the movie. And it's not a murder or anything like that. The pervy wife, she goes to a pool hall. She just gives this strange guy one little smile like this. And then things just escalate from there. And we get this really gross scene of this guy and his friends. They all sit at the table with her. And one of them does some stuff under the table with his foot. It is such a long scene. It's probably not that long, but it felt long. There are three things I think of when I think of this movie. I think about that foot thing. I think about the quacking. And I think about the nipple thing, which we'll get to soon. Oh, I do want to say something about the pervy wife. I get Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward vibes from her story, okay? So she has things that she likes and she knows that she likes. And she pursues them, but she doesn't want to like. You can tell she doesn't want to like it sometimes. I feel like this is the kind of thing they were trying to go for with Strange Vice. They didn't exactly define it as well as the pervy wife and her vices. So with the pervy wife, we get to see her vices, we get to see them being acted out, and we see like examples. And I think that was a little better executed than Mrs. Ward's strange vices. Okay, and almost halfway through the film, we finally get to see Andrea, aka Bruno from A Blade in the Dark, known in this movie as Peter. It is so funny to me that in my Blade in the Dark review, I mentioned how Andrea just seems like the sweetest, most innocent man. Like, he seems like such a good guy, and that I could never see him playing any other part but a good guy. And here he is in this movie, playing the killer. Like I've said, really nobody in this movie is likable, but I did enjoy the little friendship between Mr. Cop and the professor that he enlists to help him. Over time, like, they kind of start to bond, and I think that's cute. And towards the end of the movie, when things are starting to climax, Mr. Duck calls Mr. Cop and says, "I'm going to dedicate a killing to you. My next victim will be just for you," or something. It's just like, that's pretty messed up. Well, turns out there's going to be extra guilt because that victim is Mr. Cobb's favorite prostitute. Now this is like one of the defining scenes of the movie. So Mr. Duck takes just like a razor blade and slices the prostitute across the nipple, okay, cutting it in half. It's really bad. And then does the same thing to her eye. That was really well done. Now the only thing I have to say about moments like this is like, why is her head just still while he slices her eye open? Like, why isn't she doing this? You know what I mean? There's just no resistance a lot of times in these movies, but obviously, like, if she was wiggling around, we couldn't see the eye get cut in half. But basically, as you recall, the whole twist at the end is that Peter's daughter is terminally ill. She's in the hospital, and Peter takes on basically the symbol of the toy ducks that his daughter likes to play with. And as the duck, he's the avenger for his daughter's inevitable death. So because his daughter can't ever grow up to be a woman, he's going around and killing full-grown women. Right? Logical. I liked all the twists in this movie, as I do in most Jolly, and luckily for me, I'm usually not crafty enough to anticipate what the twist will be, so it's usually quite a surprise. Oh, and one more thing. Okay, so whatever disease they said this daughter had in the movie, I was like, well, I'm going to Google this and see if it's a real disease. They were calling it like lympho something. So I Googled it. I'm not sure. The disease that I was led to was an STD with some awful pictures. So I just exited that real quick. Okay, and in trying to just keep this brief, I'll just wrap it up here and say a few final things. I think that this Giallo is different than a lot of others. One being that it takes place in America, of course, but I think we're used to latching on to a desirable main character. We're used to a lot of beauty and glamour and wealth and beautiful scenery, and we don't really get any of that in this movie. This movie's kind of dirty and dingy and dark and just filled with unlikable characters all around. Okay, so what is the verdict? I would say, despite the gratuitous sexual content, despite the unlikable setting and undesirable characters, this movie is still worth it. It's worth it for the following reasons: the camera work, the quacking, Andrea Occhipinti, and the creative violence. This movie didn't make it onto my favorites list, but it's still something that I'm glad that I watched. Another good installment into the genre, despite it being from the 80s. I mean, yeah, it was really just a silly plot all around. But it takes a special person to be a fan of Giallo, does it not? After reading some thoughts and like reviews from critics and everything, I understand why people dislike this movie. I totally get it. I get their reasons. But I suppose ultimately I'm going to fall on the side of I like this movie. Now, you guys want to know what I think of this movie as a woman. I have to say, this movie is nasty. Filthy. Those scenes aren't really my favorite kind of thing to watch. But, like I said, nothing was non-consensual. So, it could be worse. I do think that perhaps there should be more equality when it comes to, like, nudity. Not that I want to see more, or not that I want to see all the dudes naked, but I just think it might level the playing field. It might like turn down that objectification just a little bit. Now, some reviewers said that this movie is extremely misogynistic because the killer is killing women specifically in the most brutal of ways. I don't think that that makes this movie more misogynistic than any other movie, because the killer is killing women for a reason. Like, there's a reason behind it. Is you know what I mean? Like, it's part of the story as to why women are being killed. It's not just for no reason. Plus, 2 men also die in this movie, and one guy gets shot right through the face, and we watch it. I don't know. That argument about, well, if women are getting killed, it's a misogynistic movie. I can't quite understand that, but I can't put into words my counter argument for that. I just think that women are just dying in movies because it's part of the story. And again, this is an exploitation flick. This is cashing in on tropes. This is cashing in on the things that offend people. I think I'm not disturbed by violence against women. I'm disturbed more by RAPE. That's what disturbs me more. So that's where I'm coming from when I say, as a woman, this movie doesn't bother me that much. In conclusion, I think it was a fun time. It's definitely an experience, and I think that a lot of Giallo fans out there would appreciate enduring such an experience. And that wraps up this video. This was not the most intellectual, critical essay, if you will, but I hope it was still fun to watch. I hope this video worked out. Let me know if you did like this kind of style of video, and if you want to talk about anything else New York Ripper that I didn't mention, you can comment below. I don't ask for comments because I want engagement. I don't care about this stuff. I ask for comments because I want human contact, especially about something that I like. So comment if you want to talk. It's like a chat room. All right, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.